The Judgment Day, a disruptive group by any means of the measure in pro wrestling, had its roots in WrestleMania season in 2022. Edge was in an interesting position as a veteran in a second stage of his career when many thought he wouldn't be wrestling anymore. Here he was trying to reinvent himself now as a modern-day villain. The previous year, he headlined WrestleMania 37 in a losing effort. In 2022, it seemed like there was nothing in store for him except an opportunity to reinvent. So his idea was simple: call somebody out for a WrestleMania match, and whoever answered the challenge would be his opponent. It worked. He would face a formidable challenge, a phenomenal one, in AJ Styles, answering for that dream match. And during the course of this rivalry, Edge turned into a villainous persona for the first time in well over a decade, and reminded fans who he really was at AJ Styles' expense. While the WrestleMania match itself failed to deliver on the dream match expectations, and it kind of fell flat, it marked the start of something special for Edge's partnership with Damian Priest. At this point, Damian Priest was also in a bit of a limbo in WWE. It had been little over a year since he joined the main roster and was an instant success, but that had waned just a little bit. Being put in the position of being paired with super celebrity crossover star Bad Bunny as an ally, the man he teamed with on a wrestling debut spotlight match at WrestleMania, Damian Priest had no other scenarios that could pan or meet or surpass that for him currently. He was in a sink or swim position with WWE, and it was time to really swim. Are you all rising right now? Yes, this is a deep dive into the history of the Judgment Day in WWE. I'm Kevin Kellum, this is Sportskeeda Wrestling. Let us know what you think of the Judgment Day in the comments below. In 2021, Damian Priest, tall and formidable, dethroned the veteran Sheamus at SummerSlam to become the US champion, and did a great job with the title until February of 2022, when Finn Balor defeated him. After that, Priest became a real bad guy, and attacked Balor despite losing clean. Edge, now villainous, spoke about it to Corey Graves on the After the Bell podcast, and admitted that the way things played out with the Judgment Day was entirely different than what was actually planned at the beginning. His idea was for a group to be put together of talented individuals who felt they weren't getting the opportunities they rightfully deserved in WWE. In his opinion, if they got the opportunity, they could fly with it. And that statement aged like fine wine. So after WrestleMania 38 in Texas, the duo of Edge and Damian Priest dubbed themselves the Judgment Day. At the next premium live event, WrestleMania Backlash, Priest was barred from ringside so Edge and AJ Styles could run it back and go one-on-one. And what AJ didn't know is that Edge already had another plan. Putting the plan into action, another person would join the group. At this event, Rhea Ripley, helping Edge defeat AJ Styles and became the third member of the JD. Next, Styles was pursuing even more of the rivalry with Edge at the help of Finn Balor and Liv Morgan to take on this new trio of Rhea Ripley, Damian Priest, and Edge. And they were unsuccessful at the Hell in a Cell event in Chicago. Edge would catch Finn Balor with a spear at the conclusion of the match after he missed his big coup de grace off the top rope. But one night later, Edge would reveal that the Judgment Day had a fourth member, and it was none other than Finn Balor, the man he speared and pinned just that week at the Hell in a Cell show. Remember how we mentioned that time when Damian Priest attacked Finn Balor after losing his US title? That's one of those seeds that people seem to forget about that plays an important role in the Balor and Priest story weaved in here. We'll touch on that. Balor was in a similar position in his career. Though established and well regarded as one of the best in-ring performers, he simply was hitting a wall and not getting the opportunities he wanted. So, once again, the Judgment Day felt like the right spot. But Finn Balor's arrival in the Judgment Day marked a shocking and dramatic exit in the group, a real shift. Though the Judgment Day was new, their hope of reclaiming some power as a collective, at that point WWE had teased doing something supernatural with the direction of the Judgment Day. But thankfully, better senses prevailed, and they decided against it. But what Edge revealed about the decision behind the scenes was quite interesting. When Balor joined the ranks, Damian Priest said that they were going to shed the last bit of limitations holding them back as a group. And it looked like Edge was that limitation. Yes, one sneering look, and that's what it took. One of the best clotheslines you'll see, Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley, and Finn Balor turned on Edge, and brutally assaulted him out of the group he started for them. Speaking on the Talk is Jericho podcast, Edge revealed that the original plan for the Judgment Day to continue under his leadership for a year after Finn Balor joined, but when he got to Hell in a Cell, he was told that entire storyline would be sped up, concluding his role in the Judgment Day the next night. When it was happening, it seemed like a bizarre, abrupt decision, somewhat typical at that time of wild twists and turns that didn't gel with the audience during the pre-Triple H creative era of WWE. But in hindsight, even Edge seems to think that it was the right call. Edge would tell Jericho on the same podcast that Priest, Ripley, and Balor would be swimming upstream without him. And what he meant by this is they didn't need him in the group to be the group they were meant to be. Thus, the Judgment Day, as we would come to know it, was formed. They made it clear that there would be no leaders of this group. Around this time, the soon-to-be notorious group would begin setting their sights on a new possible recruit, someone who would deny their advances, the impressionable young superstar, the son of Rey Mysterio, Dominik Mysterio. At this time, Dominik was certainly in the mix in WWE, but he was getting screen time, but nearly 2 years on the main roster, there wasn't much of a character there. He was Rey Mysterio's son, who tag teamed with Rey Mysterio. Not a bad spot, but nothing more than that. Some people claim that he was a bland, good guy who was just happy to be there, and that's because of his dad, but things were about to change in a big way. For one, we saw the seed planted for the Dominik-Rhea relationship, with her certainly making eyes at him. At SummerSlam, the Mysterios defeated Damian Priest and Finn Balor thanks to Edge's interference. The next month at the Clash of the Castle event, Dominik was frustrated when Rey Mysterio chose to team up with the more experienced Edge instead of his son. And this was an Edge who wanted his revenge on the group he formed that turned on him. That would be a turning point in all of it in a way that we didn't expect. In front of tens of thousands of people in the UK, after Rey Mysterio and Edge won the match, Dominik Mysterio assaulted Edge before his disillusioned father got taken out. Dominik Mysterio wasn't the final addition to the Judgment Day, but certainly was a formidable addition to the group. And he turned out to be a perfect one as it gave his career new life and new direction. Suddenly, the kid who appeared to be happy to be on WWE was now seizing the opportunity and became the most hated villain we've seen in years. Yeah, you've heard the reaction he gets in front of live audiences since he turned on his father. There really aren't many people who have achieved that level of heat that he has, but if you want to see more than that, we have an entire video about the rise of Dominik Mysterio. Check that out on our main feed in this channel. Edge remained in the mix after the Clash at the Castle, seeking even more succinct and defined revenge on the group he formed that turned on him and how the last few months had unfolded. The man was on the receiving end of not one but 2 betrayals in just 3 months. And it led to an I Quit match between Finn Balor and Edge at that year's Extreme Rules match. Rhea Bloody Ripley would be the one to make Edge quit after she threatened to hit his wife, Beth Phoenix, with a concerto. It was a great bit of storytelling. The concerto is something Edge is known for in his villainous side of his career, but here he was having it used against him and a loved one. It added so much drama and showed how relentlessly evil the Judgment Day could be on their own under no leader. It was a moment of true agonizing mental anguish at the hands of Edge as his prone wife was now going to feel the pain of a move he had used to injure other superstars. After saying the words "I quit," Rhea Ripley assaulted Beth Phoenix with the concerto anyway. These were bad people doing bad things. At this point, Finn Balor was the true veteran of the group, having traveled the world, having the Bullet Club rub on him before the JD. It's important to remember in 2022 that Rhea Ripley, Damian Priest, Dominik Mysterio had a combined 18 years of experience in the wrestling business, while Finn Balor alone had hit just 21 years. The story of Edge versus the Judgment Day was meant to be Edge versus Finn Balor. Once the rivalry was put on a hiatus, JD continued their original mission of trying to recruit the phenomenal AJ Styles, a man who had some history with the Bullet Club. This time, he had help. Apart from the returning Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, the OC, they recruited Mia Yim to their ranks to combat Rhea Ripley and fend off this issue. The feud lasted only 2 months, and AJ Styles was getting his win back over Finn Balor 5 years after their first match. But one night later, the Judgment Day defeated the OC in an 8-man tag team match to end the short but brief and interesting rivalry. There could have been more there. That is something in the early stages of the Judgment Day that could have been developed and maybe elongated into something bigger. The Judgment Day was in a 4-person form, proving to be far better than anything that had happened when Edge was their leader. It worked, and they were quickly rising, becoming the number 2 faction in WWE behind the Bloodline. The Royal Rumble that year proved to be the next significant step for the Judgment Day. In the build-up, Priest and Mysterio failed to capture the undisputed tag team titles. This was pretty frustrating, as many felt like that was their titles to win as a new breakout group. In the men's Rumble match itself, Edge returned and took out Finn Balor and Damian Priest before the Judgment Day ganged up on him and got him eliminated, reigniting the issues between the Rated R superstar and the band of rebels that he had created. When Rhea Ripley came out to assist, she was attacked by a revenging Beth Phoenix. Her luck seemed to be out because she was not only due to compete in the Women's Royal Rumble match, but she would be the first entrant in it. Up to that point, no woman had won from the number 1 spot. Even among the men, only Shawn Michaels, Chris Benoit, Edge were able to do it in the 35-year history of the Rumble match, but Rhea Ripley did it. She was bound to break out around this time. There were surging new fans jumping into WWE who were getting on the Rhea Ripley train. She was scratching the itch of many people that were casual wrestling fans and many die-hard wrestling fans all at the same time. She became the first woman to ever win from the number 1 spot and also had the longest time spent in a single Rumble match until Bayley and Naomi broke that record the next year. Rhea Ripley had arrived and her stardom was on a vertical trajectory. She instantly felt like the biggest star in the Judgment Day. It was her group and they were built around her. From one standpoint, the Judgment Day was already a massive success. It raised the stock of several names. It broke Dominik out of his shell and turned Rhea Ripley into a top name for the women. The next one to benefit would be Damian Priest, but it should have been Finn Balor first. After Edge and Beth Phoenix returned, they faced Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley in a tag team match at Elimination Chamber. The Hall of Famer won that match. It seemed like an okay decision because everybody just thought it was some comeuppance for Edge and Beth Phoenix, which morally they had earned at the hands of this pretty evil group before Finn Balor got the big win at WrestleMania. While Rhea Ripley, with her Royal Rumble privileges she had won, chose to take on Charlotte Flair and face her for the Women's Championship at WrestleMania 39 to avenge her loss at WrestleMania 36 years earlier. Edge and Finn Balor would square off in a Hell in a Cell match to end their issue. It seemed like a fitting place for Finn Balor to get the last laugh because Edge, as we know, was months away from a WWE exit. At least we know that now in retrospect. Finn Balor would also be wrestling as the Demon for the first time since 2021. Unfortunately, it turned out not to be the case, and we have no idea what the reasoning was behind it, but somebody backstage seemed to think that Edge beating the Demon would be a good idea. I was there. I saw the match, and I believe that Edge had the reason to beat a guy who had, been behind an attack on his wife and family and turned on him. So, ethics, morals, good guy, he came out to Slayer. He had the power of Slayer. Heavy Metal Slayer was there. It was clear it wasn't the way that maybe some of the younger fans who were putting on all of their eye gloss and putting on all of their Rhea Ripley shirts wanted it to go for Finn Balor, but back then, it was a bigger deal for Judgment Day trying to break out, even though they had already broken out. Yeah, I know, there's a debate here. We didn't even mention the fact that Dominik Mysterio was feuding with his father going into WrestleMania 39. It all culminated in a moment on SmackDown when Dominik was trash-talking his mother in front of the world, and Rey Mysterio, rightfully, finally snapped and attacked his son, now accepting the long tease match father versus son. The story was incredible. It was built up to for months. It was another part of the multi-purposed, multi-pronged attack that Judgment Day had on every hallowed, beloved superstar. And it was something that was built up to. For 6 months, Rey Mysterio was unable to lay a finger on his son, and now they were going to have a match in Los Angeles at WrestleMania 39. This was despite the fact that Dominik betrayed, humiliated, invaded his own family's holiday home on Thanksgiving and Christmas and romantic Valentine's Day dinners, and continuously physically assaulted his own father, betraying the family legacy of Mysterio. For this specific situation, it made complete ethical sense for Rey Mysterio to kick his son's ass, and boy did he. Dominik was only a few years into his career, and it was his first single showcase, a momentous and personal one, taking on his own father, and he got his ass whipped, as I mentioned. It was a special match. Years ago, I interviewed Rey Mysterio, and he said this was the type of match he always envisioned having with his son. Or maybe there's another one to come where the mask is passed on. That's maybe a subject for a whole nother video. Rhea Ripley, meanwhile, had one of the best women's matches in WWE history at the time, dethroning Charlotte Flair in a true show-stealing match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. She had already been on the rise, but this turned her into an undisputed #1 women's superstar in all of professional wrestling. Priest, on the other hand, may not have had a match on the card of 2 nights of WrestleMania 39, but he was all set for a meteoric rise in the year to follow. The hotly anticipated Backlash Premium Live event was set to be hosted in Puerto Rico, the homeland of both Bad Bunny and Damian Priest, and he was announced as a special host for the show. They were bound for an epic collision, and their personal issues were now brewing at the surface. But in the month that followed WrestleMania, Damian Priest chose his brotherhood with the Judgment Day over his past alliance with Bad Bunny, leading to a bitter rivalry. Bad Bunny then announced that he wasn't going to just be the host anymore of Backlash. He was going to face Damian Priest in a San Juan street fight. This felt like a reward for Priest, who didn't get a showcase at WrestleMania, but was going to get something special in front of an absolutely lava-hot audience against one of the biggest celebrities in the world. While Rhea Ripley overcame Zelina Vega as her first major title challenger, Bad Bunny vs. Damian Priest was an over-the-top classic. Getting a good 25 minutes, it was just as chaotic as you would expect a street fight to be, and one that could also allow you to see Bad Bunny still be on the level with Damian Priest, even though he wasn't, a vetted superstar on TV every week. The LWO would be interfering. Savio Vega, a Puerto Rican favorite amongst WWE fans, would appear. Carlito Caribbean Cool himself came out to also help Bad Bunny defeat Damian Priest. Yeah, the bad guys may have won, Bad Bunny may have been the victor, but WWE truly was able to get the most out of Judgment Day to propel this special match with a celebrity into astronomical heights of success. Both Damian Priest and Finn Balor participated in the tournament to crown a new champion, but the man who would be the inaugural World Heavyweight Champion eliminated them both. That man was Seth freaking Rollins, and Finn Balor had a 7-year itch needing to be scratched. Yeah, that 7-year itch from when he was injured years before at the hands of Seth Rollins, just as he got a hold of world title gold himself. There was no doubt at this point that the Judgment Day were maybe the #1 faction on Monday Night Raw, as a clear #2 to the Bloodline over on SmackDown. They were going to take that #1 spot when it looked like the Bloodline was imploding over on the other show. The 4 of them completely occupied June of 2023. They were on dozens of segments on TV every week on Monday Night Raw, basically anchoring the show from when it started to when it ended. Heading into Money in the Bank in London, Finn Balor renewed his feud with Rollins years after that Universal Championship match at SummerSlam 2016. Dominik Mysterio was in a feud with Cody Rhodes, one of WWE's hottest stars, with Rhea Ripley by his side. Damian Priest was about to take the next major step of his career, attempting to become Mr. Money in the Bank. Senior Money in the Bank is exactly what Damian Priest became when he toppled fan favorite LA Knight to cement his place as a future world champion when he captured the briefcase, allowing him to cash in a title shot whenever, wherever, and however possible. Cody Rhodes predictably took down Dominik Mysterio, but it was a competitive outing for him. But during the World Heavyweight title clash between Rollins and Finn Balor, a bit of drama ensued. And this is a great example how a story that involves someone losing a match can build to something more exciting. Just like Dominik after WrestleMania, Damian Priest was only getting better, even if he wasn't getting the ultimate prize. The SmackDown Women's Championship held by Rhea was getting a makeover, and she was announced as the new Women's World Champion. On the men's side, Triple H announced the creation of the World Heavyweight Championship. Damian Priest came out teasing a cash-in, and his interference backfired during that Money in the Bank event, directly costing Finn Balor the match. This was the first time since the post-Edge era of the Judgment Day that cracks may have begun to show. WWE played into the tension within the Judgment Day's purple and black ranks, with Balor getting a rematch for the world title at SummerSlam. The arguments between Balor and Priest began to cause a strain on the Judgment Day, with Rhea Ripley constantly having to act like a mommy mediator, while Dominik sat uselessly at her side. Damian Priest's interference would once again backfire at SummerSlam, leading to Seth Rollins getting the last laugh over Finn Balor. This was a truly bitter moment for Balor, who seemed to be having the least success out of all the members of the Judgment Day, despite having the most experience and the most critical acclaim going into the group. The tension seemed to dissolve rather quickly though, and we now know that this period would be one of the causes for the eventual downfall and implosion of the faction. Still, Dirty Dominik added the second piece of gold to the Judgment Day mantle when he beat Wes Lee to become the NXT North American Champion. That's right. The purple and black superstars were so over, despite all of these issues, that they were utilized on WWE's third brand to boost that show's rating and give Dominik more reps in the ring as a televised superstar. Of course, he needed the help of Balor, Priest, and Rhea Ripley to get the job done against Wes Lee because he's dirty, no good Dominik. But Dominik ended up making a cool bit of history that week. On Monday Night Raw, he and Damian Priest lost to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in the main event of Raw for the tag team titles. The next night, Dominik headlined NXT and became the North American Champion. A few days later on SmackDown, he retained the title against Pete Butcher Dunne, when he was called Butch, and in doing so, Dominik became the first person in WWE history to headline Raw, NXT, and SmackDown in 1 week. Great things were happening, and it was only going to get better. At the Payback event in September, Finn Balor and Damian Priest put all of their issues aside and became the undisputed tag team champions in a wonderful street fight. It was a wild night in Pennsylvania as Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn really tested Priest and Balor. Balor would become a Grand Slam champion. The Judgment Day had the evolution-like moment where each member held championship gold. Truly the defining moment of a faction being above the rest that they're compared to. It also came around this time that J.D. McDonough, the Irish ace, started to get involved with the Judgment Day. Finn Balor, a fellow Irishman, was an advocate and worked on recruiting McDonough, but Damian Priest seemed resistant to the idea of bringing McDonough into the group. Still, McDonough came into his own as a useful aid to the Judgment Day. Dominik Mysterio lost his NXT North American Championship to Trick Williams, who got whooping with that trick, Damian Priest and Finn Balor lost the tag team titles to Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso, but won it back a little over a week later. The Judgment Day's antics of interfering in matches were catching up with them, and it looked like the walls were closing in on them and their cheating ways. Rhea Ripley had an average reign as Women's World Champion up to that point and was dealing with some injury issues, but they still wanted to keep the title on her since she had some red-hot popularity that has not relented since. She was dominant in her title defenses, but there weren't many of them to make it an entertaining run. Meanwhile, Judgment Day was going to face another formidable foe, Cody Rhodes, who was getting involved with the war that they were starting with basically every good guy on Monday Night Raw. At the Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia, Rhea Ripley would defeat 4 other women in a fatal 5-way match. Damian Priest, though, would be on the losing end in a one-on-one match with Cody Rhodes, despite his other Judgment Day members trying to interfere. Yeah, interfering in every match wasn't always going to be helpful. He also continued to tease a cash-in of his Money in the Bank briefcase, but the timing was just never right there for him. The next logical step was to make the Judgment Day go up against a formidable alliance of people that simply had enough of everything purple and black on Monday nights. This group would include Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, and Sami Zayn, all of whom had personal investment in causing the Judgment Day some real harm. During this time, JD McDonough officially got the nod and became the 5th member of the Judgment Day. But it wasn't enough for them at Survivor Series War Games in Chicago in front of a red-hot, sold-out crowd, with the 4 of them forging an alliance with Drew McIntyre, only to lose. It was a bit of a catch-22 situation with the Judgment Day. It seemed like more often than not, they were on the losing effort in big matches, and when they lost, it looked like they were losing steam, only for them to hop back and gain momentum on weekly television and dominate TV time on Monday Night Raw. At the end of 2023, it was R-Truth who turned out to be the one to breathe some levity into the very serious heavy metal aesthetic of the Judgment Day. He was so good that we got to see a bit of the lighter side of the group. His rivalry with the very big-headed JD McDonough in particular was quite hilarious. Remember how they had the Miracle on 34th Street fight for the holiday-themed episode of Monday Night Raw with the loser leaves the Judgment Day? JD lost, but he stayed in the Judgment Day anyway. It was a first full year together as a group, and despite all the setbacks, they knocked it out of the park and truly were a pivotal part of WWE's overall programming arcs to get some big superstars ready for the upcoming WrestleMania season. The 2024 Royal Rumble wasn't quite as successful for the Judgment Day, but next month at the Elimination Chamber event in Australia, where Rhea Ripley was a national icon, she got to have a big headlining match in her home country, defeating Nia Jax. While Finn Balor and Damian Priest continue to iron their grip on the undisputed tag team championships by beating Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate, Rhea defeated Nia Jax, as we mentioned. It was a big moment, but it was also setting up a long-awaited clash between her and the man, Becky Lynch, at WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia. This time around, 4 of the 5 would get marquee matches and moments at the show of shows. The Judgment Day unsuccessfully tried to recruit Andrade, who recently rejoined WWE, who ended up siding with Rey Mysterio and the LWO instead. At WrestleMania, Dominik and Santos Escobar lost to Rey Mysterio and Andrade, while Damian Priest and Finn Balor lost both halves of the undisputed tag team championships while defending it against 5 other teams. Rhea Ripley opened up WrestleMania 40, defeating Becky Lynch to solidify herself as the #1 woman in all of professional wrestling. Up to that point, WWE had ensured to keep Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley separate, so when they eventually met, it was quite special. In back-to-back WrestleManias, Rhea Ripley defeated Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, 2 women who were considered to be among the greatest to ever do it and generation-defying talents before the rise of Rhea and the Judgment Day. Damian Priest was clowned on a lot as Senior Money in the Bank because of his unsuccessful cash-ins, but his contract wasn't expiring anytime soon. But after Drew McIntyre defeated Seth Rollins on night 2 to become the new World Heavyweight Champion, Drew McIntyre tried to rub it in his rival's face, who was injured at ringside and on commentary, CM Punk. CM Punk would lay out Drew McIntyre and give him a moment of vulnerability that the Scotsman, who had just won the world title 5 minutes earlier, didn't want. A vulnerable moment for a successful and easy cash-in for Damian Priest to become the World Heavyweight Champion. Suddenly, he went from looking like maybe the most foolish Money in the Bank holder to maybe one of the smartest. There was no denying that the former Punishment Martinez in Ring of Honor, who had waged his way through the ranks of pro wrestling and certainly WWE with the Judgment Day, had earned this truly crowning moment on the biggest wrestling stage you could imagine. He had to step it up because only a little over a week later, Rhea Ripley was forced to vacate the Women's World Championship after suffering a horrific arm injury when Liv Morgan, her former tag team partner, attacked her backstage on Monday Night Raw. She felt like the biggest star in the Judgment Day, and she certainly got the best reactions out of the 5. But this was a big blow for them as a collective, and a chance for Damian Priest to step into that main spotlight. He managed to retain the World Heavyweight Championship against Jey Uso at Backlash thanks to interference from Finn Balor and JD McDonough, but he wasn't happy about it. He specifically instructed them not to interfere. Well, that's a little different. What's going on here? Damian Priest began to show signs of being a faithful, reliable, honorable wrestler. I believe this is meant to be a wrestling terminology for a good guy, by wanting to prove himself as a fighting World Heavyweight Champion. The Judgment Day proved to be an obstacle in this moral conflict. And then Liv Morgan injected herself into the situation like a dose of lethal, alluring poison, like DC Comics' Poison Ivy. Like a certain man once said, she shook the dynamic of the Judgment Day forever. And Mommy was away. Carlito took R-Truth's place as the comedic relief of the group without ever being an official part of the Judgment Day. In Rhea Ripley's absence, dirty Dominik Mysterio found himself getting pursued by Miss Morgan, who made it clear that she wanted to take everything from Rhea Ripley away. It's also worth mentioning that Rhea Ripley hadn't been pinned since 2022, and the last woman to do that was none other than her former tag team partner, who she injured in 2022, Liv Morgan. Liv would go on to become the women's world champion in Saudi Arabia, taking something else from Rhea Ripley, the title she never officially lost but was forced to vacate. To make matters worse, dirty Dominik Mysterio, who flew all the way across the world to cost Morgan the championship, or so we thought, ended up mistakenly, or maybe mistakenly, help her become the women's world champion. We only saw cracks in the Judgment Day after the summer of 2023, but those wounds were seemingly to be healed were now opening up, and opening up very quickly without anybody realizing it. Damian Priest warned Dom to draw a boundary with Miss Morgan, and Dominik's continuous refusal to do so was quite questionable. He even lied about talking to Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest, who actually spoke to Rhea and said she was pissed. Oh, shocker. Then we had a few suspicious moments where Finn Balor was sneakily swiping Liv Morgan's hotel room key while JD McDonough's armband was spotted in Liv's social media posts. What's going on here? Damian, meanwhile, was living up to his word of being a great fighting champion. He even agreed to give Drew McIntyre a world title shot in his home country of Scotland at the Clash at the Castle event. The stakes were high, but Damian never hesitated at the idea of beating the home country hero and being enemy number 1 in Glasgow. The match also went his way thanks to CM Punk still having an issue with Drew McIntyre. Even when the JD was barred from ringside, he got the let-off of Punk getting involved. When Rollins returned, Damian Priest offered him a title shot at Money in the Bank. You're just giving these things out, Damian. This led to a gentleman's agreement where Damian Priest would leave the Judgment Day if he lost, and Seth Rollins wouldn't be able to compete for the world title if he lost. During this build-up, Liv Morgan repaid a favor to Dominik Mysterio by helping him and the Judgment Day, capture the World Tag Team Championships. Finn Balor and JD McDonough defeating R-Truth to win those straps back for the purple and black. At the Money in the Bank event, Drew McIntyre would cash in his briefcase that he won earlier in the night, only for CM Punk to cost him again. Damian Priest was once again the beneficiary of wild circumstances, but it was another asterisk in his world title defenses not being as pristine as he wanted them to be. He didn't want the help at Backlash, he didn't want the help at the Clash at the Castle, and despite the high-pressure situation, he didn't want the help at Money in the Bank, but he got it anyway. In a show of respect, Damian Priest broke the gentleman's agreement and promised Seth Rollins a world title shot after SummerSlam. The reactions towards him were getting better. They were changing, all while the Judgment Day was still in a state of internal chaos, even though they had the tag team titles. Mind you, they had 3 championships in the group and were still in all of this turmoil. For the towering Damian Priest, his next challenger was a man who had already booked his SummerSlam ticket months before, winning the King of the Ring tournament, the Ring General, Gunther, who had previously just lost the WWE Intercontinental Championship, but raised that championship stock by breaking the record for having the longest reign with it. Now, he wanted to pursue world title gold. While Priest had the looming threat of Gunther, it was hard to ignore the things that were going on in his faction. His pleas to Dominik to push away Liv Morgan and reject her advances were in vain. He knew his boy Dominik was under this girl's spell. Dominik, meanwhile, teamed with Liv Morgan, and thanks to her, did what he was unable to do before, pin his legendary father, Rey Mysterio. While it looked like Dominik and Liv were finally going to become a thing, boom, brutality was back on Monday Night Raw. Rhea Ripley returned from injury, and the temperature changed pretty quickly. Hey, Dominik, don't be touching that girl. Rhea's here. You're in trouble, buddy. Make no mistake about it, she was pissed. But for some reason, it didn't take Dominik very long to get in Mummy's good graces. Still, there was a stink within the Judgment Day, and it wouldn't go away. Yeah, there was not enough deodorant to solve this problem. SummerSlam opened with Rhea Ripley attempting to regain the Women's World Championship from Liv Morgan, with Dominik by her side. And obviously, everyone was expecting Dominik to be loyal to Mommy once again. Yeah, Dominik had rejected Liv on TV, so he's going to be good to Mommy. The twist was kind of coming a mile away. Yeah, it was still surreal when it happened. Dominik turned on Rhea and laid a big old smooch on Liv Morgan, revealing the entire ploy that unfolded for months after WrestleMania. Rhea Ripley's reaction was incredible. Rhea Ripley looked vulnerable, like a crying child in a fetal position, running away from all of her problems, and in seconds the anger, the seething rage, the fueled by passion fury appeared on her face. The drama dripped off the screen. Yes, what was Liv Morgan's revenge tour was now Rhea Ripley's revenge tour. Damian Priest, on the other hand, was only the one to be infuriated by what happened when he stormed into the Judgment Day's clubhouse to search for Dominik. After kicking a few things around, he grabbed Finn Balor by his collar and asked him if he knew this was coming. Balor was calm and collected in the moment. We had seen him like this before, enough to make Damian Priest feel bad about questioning him. There was a second betrayal in place on this night in Ohio, one that would end the Judgment Day as we know it. Damian Priest had to put all these emotions aside because he had to take on Gunther. Yeah, a man who had a near flawless record on WWE's main roster. Despite losing that IC title at WrestleMania, the Ring General was really gaining steam heading into that SummerSlam. Finn Balor came out during the match, and the Implosion finally happened, and what would have been certainly a secured victory. Finn Balor put Gunther's leg on the ropes, fulfilling his destiny of becoming a world champion. Damian Priest was screwed. The Judgment Day in its best formation was gone. A shout out to Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest, who delivered real moments in losing here. That's right, not everyone has to win, technically get the W, to have a moment that truly is a win in terms of advancing a story. On the Raw after SummerSlam 2024, Finn Balor brought up the fact that Damian Priest cost him at SummerSlam the previous year. Fact, yeah, that's true. He also didn't like the fact that Damian had acted like the leader of the JD after becoming world champion. And then the big reveal, Liv Morgan and Carlito were the new Judgment Day members. We don't even know what we call the Judgment Day in its new form. It doesn't feel right, even though it is right. Yeah, I know there's no leaders and no egos, but it seems like there's definitely egos if there isn't leaders, and if there is a leader, it's Finn Balor. But you know what I mean? We're dealing with change, and change is hard. As of now, there's been no name given to them, and we hope they're presented more as a spinoff of the Judgment Day rather than the same group, or maybe just a group that's easier to boo. The reason for that being is there will never be another group like Judgment Day. We would argue that WWE struck gold with the 4-person version of it, with Balor, Priest, Rhea, and Dominik. There aren't many factions in WWE history that have benefited from each member, or each member benefiting so much the way Judgment Day has. Even JD McDonough, who some might say is considered an insignificant member, from a surface level observation, has really benefited. His stock has been raised. He's on TV regularly. He became a tag team champion. Despite the implosion, despite the betrayals, despite all of that, the Judgment Day undoubtedly will go down as one of the best factions of WWE in the recent years. Their tenure together only little over 2 years, but the amount that they achieved, the sheer amount of content on TV that they were a part of, is certainly something that none of us expected when the group started. In 2023 alone, the first 45 episodes of Raw had at least one Judgment Day member headlining the show 22 times. They ran Monday Night Raw in 2023 and were a force to be reckoned with for a majority of 2024. We've seen great factions before, but not so many had the kind of impact on week-to-week storylines the way Judgment Day did. Now, you've watched all of this video. Thank you. We sincerely appreciate that, but we need to know what you think. What is your thought on the Judgment Day? Where can it go? How can it evolve? Where does the group rank amongst the all-time factions in pro wrestling? Let us know. Those comments are below, and you can use your fingers to express yourselves with all the other wrestling fans as well. Also, be sure to subscribe to Sportskeeda Wrestling and turn those notifications on so you know when we drop new videos just like this one.